This meeting is being recorded.
Do you know, it didn't say that to me.
Hello. It's the Culture and Justice Reform podcast, slight return. We have a special this time where I'm going to speak to Emma Wells, my usual co-host, and she'll speak to me as well. And Emma's here. Hello, Emma.
Hi, nice to see you. It's been a while.
You too. How's it all going for you?
Yeah, not bad.
Been up to anything interesting since? I don't think we've done one of these since Christmas.
I've settled in now nicely where I am, and I'm getting on what I moved here to do. Obviously, I've written my book. That's about to be published 23rd. Everything's moving along nicely. Yeah.
Excellent. So there's a book coming. Tell us about that then.
So the book is it's about victims of another's offending. Now, it is primarily directed towards the sexual offenders who obviously have the family and the loved ones who surround them, and how these offences and obviously the criminality of another, whether it be a false allegation, which is also criminality, affects these unseen victims. It goes into great detail about how to cope with these terrible things, burdens that are put on these people. Obviously, it goes court etiquette, goes through the visits, how to deal with how phone calls work. But more importantly than anything, it identifies the red flags that people should be trying to identify way before they start jumping on, believing that their loved one is innocent or not. They need to start looking at these things, and just the whole prison journey. It covers things like I was invited to HMP Stafford. I was given a very privileged tour of the whole prison facility. So hopefully, in that respect, it will eliminate some of the fears that these loved ones have. It's just it encompasses everything: the afterlife and what to realistically expect by way of employment, and how they dealt with probation if they put under MAPA surveillance. Absolutely everything you can imagine. If you are accused of a sexual offence, it covers pretty much. And I think that's the whole concept of it.
Lovely. So is it all completely written by you, or is it by other people as well?
No, I've been very fortunate. I've just embedded within it 13 stories, and of these 13 stories, each one of them is horrifying yet enthralling, because it's an actual perspective of somebody it's their journey and what happened with their loved one. There's one in there that's called Jack's story, and it's a young homosexual man who ended up in a sexual encounter with what he thought was a consenting adult. It turned out that this person had been a 14-year-old boy, and ultimately he took his own life. It's a very sad story. But then there's other ones where these are all stories that have afforded me over the 6 years that I've been involved in supporting people who found themselves in these positions. I've actually got one in there that's a police officer's wife who he'd been caught by a sting. There's all sorts, but there's 13 stories embedded within my actual personal journey. ITV did a documentary about what went on with me. There's all sorts in there. It's packed full of goodies, which hopefully will help.
Yeah. That's obviously very interesting. I had an opportunity to actually watch the documentary you're talking about recently. How much do you want to tell us about how your experience affected the book and how you see everything now? Just give us a little outline of it all.
The most poignant part of the whole of the ITV documentary was that on my birthday, which is one of the reasons why I've released the book on my birthday this year, on my birthday of that year, which was only 2 days after the episode was aired, I accumulated a huge pile of tablets, put it on the bed in front of me, and I started taking them. And I would have seriously never have woken up again had Scott not rang and told me to put the bottle of brandy down, stop taking the tablets. Fight for yourself, Emma. Don't fight for, this is a wrong against you, because it was a wrong against me. In the same case as Philip Schofield, I know that we spoke, Philip Schofield's family at the minute are the unseen victims of Timothy's offending, and they will feel so betrayed.
Just to stop you there, Well, what's the story for the Philip Schofield thing for our international audience?
Sorry. So Philip Schofield, ITV presenter, Gordon the Gopher. He's been around since I was a kid, so he's been around quite some time.
Gordon the
Quite
Gopher.
a popular character.
Carry
I'm
on, carry
old now. I'm old now. I'm
Yeah.
getting on. It's an incredibly popular, charismatic UK figure. Yeah, everybody loves Philip Schofield. A few years ago, his relationship broke down with his wife, and it was identified by the press, whether it's true or not, who knows, that he'd been in a relationship with quite a young person, and it was a gay relationship, homosexual. He came out as gay. Fast forward a couple of years to where we are today, and his brother Timothy has been found guilty of engaging in inappropriate and sexual behaviour with a 13-year-old child. Obviously, the media are coming down on him like a ton of bricks, and Philip Schofield has made a bold statement saying that he no longer has a brother. That's a knee-jerk reaction. It's what most of us say. The opening sentence pretty much in my book says that a well-used phrase is, if it was anyone who I knew, if it was my husband, my partner, or whatever, I'd cut his balls off and throw and shove them down his throat. Now, this is not a regular. It happened with John Bobbitt. That's the only case that I can find through trolling the internet. That's the only case I can find. But 19% of prison populations are made up by sex offenders. Now, if that was the case, then there'd be an awful lot of people with no testicles, and there'd also be an awful lot of people, women in prisons, serving time for committing the crimes against who they believe to commit this criminal offence. But that aside, that's the opening bit. That's exactly the opening bit to my book. A knee-jerk reaction has been made by Philip, totally understandable. But in time, he will 99% sure that he will be in contact with Timothy. And he's an unseen victim. Yet he's been penalised. He's been vilified by the press because of who he is. And it's very cruel.
Yeah, but he's not exactly unseen, is he?
What do you mean, unseen? In what sense?
He's the most...
Oh, no. Of course he's not unseen. He's completely in the spotlight. Of course he is. But so was I through ITV. So people get put into the spotlight through no fault of their own. What's happened with Timothy has got nothing to do with Philip. But he's he's driving it forward. People are engaged and wanted to jump on the bandwagon with it. And it's cruel because no matter what's going on in his own personal life, what's happened with Timothy has actually got nothing to do with him. It should it's awful. And yeah, so it's vigilantes. That's another thing that the book covers, is that vigilantes will jump on the bandwagon and they'll be baiting for absolute, the throat. They just go for the jugular every time, and they don't realise the damage that they're actually doing, because they're not damaging the person who's sat in a prison cell particularly. They're damaging his mum, Mary, who sat at home outside tea, who's absolutely terrified to leave her own house. That's what they're doing, and that's another key thing that the book identifies, is that often the people who are targeted aren't the people who've committed the crime.
It's a collateral damage, isn't it?
Absolutely collateral damage, yeah.
And it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that this is a book that you've written, and about 120 years after the picture of Dorian Gray, written by Oscar Wilde, who's a hero of a lot of writers, and he's a British historical national Irish historical national treasure. But he was doing something very similar to, and it's not even alleged, it's pretty much covered. He was doing something similar to what Philip Schofield's accused of, and his brother has been found guilty of back then. He's still considered a huge hero. He would have been given the same sort of treatment now, wouldn't he?
Of course he would. Oh, absolutely. Of course he would have been thrown in jail and the key thrown away, and he would have been vilified, and everything else that has happened to what's going on now would have happened to him. He's still a hero of, as you say, so many writers. How do you draw a line between and differentiate between what went on then and what's going on now? There is no difference, apart from obviously the media aspect and the fact that everything's so public.
That's right. And like this part is a bit speculative, okay, but kind of go with me that with Mr. Philip Schofield, as you said, is charismatic, much loved, fantastic for 40 years. We all do love him because he's so incredibly engaging and charming.
Of course he is, yeah.
And I would for pound, that is attached to his being in touch with his feminine side, or being all sorts of things, and possibly being gay. He's got that. These things are not entirely separate. You know, he's got all those things going on, and we never think about his sexuality really until he came out with it those few years ago. So at what point there'll be a lot of people online going, "You're wrong, and I knew it, and that's why your brother's done it too."
Well, there
So
are, yeah.
they're going to be kind of connecting all that up. But the fact is that he wouldn't be that big if he wasn't gay, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
What, Philip wouldn't, or Timothy?
Yeah, Philip. It's got nothing to do with Timmy, who's just been bought into this as a brother.
Yeah. I think Philip Schofield's always had that British presence. He's always been encompassing. He's always been a TV presenter. I've known him, like I said, since I was a child. So I don't think it makes any difference really in that respect. Do you?
Well, I think that the thing that kind of people are attacking, and they'll be attacking him because of Tim.
For him being homosexual, do you think that's the reason why they're jumping on it? It's because Philip Schofield is homosexual, and there was this historic, the claims made by the press that he was engaged in a relationship with a very young man.
Yeah, it's a dog whistle, isn't it? What they call it.
Of course it is. Yeah,
and
of course it is.
The stuff that you and I talk about on this kind of podcast is over the dog whistle and saying, what are they actually saying? And that is what they're actually saying. And what I'm saying is that he's that big because of the things they're attacking him for. Most people aren't as engaged and sort of charming as him because they don't have all those parts of their character coming out of being able to talk to a guy exactly as you talk to a woman, which is what they love about Phil.
Yeah. Maybe possibly. It's not something I'd ever considered, but yeah, no, you're giving some food for thought there. Some food for thought. What I did want to talk about, I'd like to say, in my book, I cover an awful lot of firsts that people find themselves going through. The unseen victims are. So you will find yourself waiting for that first phone call, that first visit, everything that's associated with it. And what I do want to say here is that I was very heavily involved a few years ago, around about 2017, 18, 19, with HMP Stafford. And I obviously, well, I'm saying obviously, but I went on a visit round the prison, a very privileged tour, and was able to go into the people's cells. And I ended up on the same cell as my partner at the time. And I was allowed to go into his prison cell with him. And I was the first woman in the UK to ever be allowed inside a prison cell beside a sex offender.
Oh, right. Wow.
And yeah, I know. Yeah. Anyway, it was a great accolade, and it's quelled so many fears as that story going forward, because people are sat at home. 80-year-old Mary, whose husband's just been carted off, is shitting herself because all she's seen is what's been broadcast into her living room for years of people beating each other up 24/7, and the horribleness of it. So I was able to give them a well-rounded. Actually, it's not that bad. In my experience of that very brief visit there, it was actually really pleasant. It was lovely. But obviously, we know that Rolf Harris at some point, well, we don't know obviously, but Rolf Harris was a resident at HMP Stafford. Now on the tour, the lady governor who gave me the walk round informed me that at not one single time in all the time that Rolf Harris was there, I think he was there for about 2 years, did he ever have a visit where he had no visitors. Now, this is a public person who's been sent to prison for terrible offending that he did, but he never had a visit where he didn't have visitors every single time. So, until you're put in the position of being the unseen victim of another's offending, you've no idea how you're ever going to react to it. So it's very easy to say that you're going to cut the balls off, you're going to have nothing to do with them, but the likeliness is that you will. So what I wanted to discuss with you was that from your perspective, obviously you didn't expect to go to prison. And from my perspective, I never in my lifetime ever expected to attend a visit in prison. So I think that it would be an interesting dialogue between the two of us to discuss your thoughts, feelings before, after, during, and whenever, and those of the person who's visiting. Yeah. I mean, my first visit, I had a panic attack, and an ambulance was called, which is in the book. So really? that's how extreme it was for me.
Yeah. That was back in 2018. and my parents, that's my mum and my stepdad, would have come up to Winchester to visit me there, where I was for 2 months. So they'd have come to Winchester at the start of that year, and we had all I'd gone to trial, so we were expecting me to go home because there was no evidence, etc., all that kind of thing. I thought, and of course I didn't.
So many.
Yes, you spend the first 6 months expecting a slip under the door saying we're sorry, there's been a mistake.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was going out to meet my mum and my stepdad there into this big old hallway with a plastic table, and you have the grey sweatshirt and your sweatpants on. I had a pair of jeans, and you're just very reduced. You're just in an incredibly reduced state. My stutter was in full effect because I didn't speak at trial because of it. Was advised not to speak because of my stammer, and so I was almost mute. But of course, when you see your mum, you're just kind of there's a hug and there's a handshake with my stepdad, and it's all very is everything all right, Ben? Because they call me Ben because that's my family name, So we sort of sat there, had a cup of coffee, got coffee in, and my stepdad got a bunch of the snacks that they serve, which is like Mars bar and two coffees, 2 cappuccinos, and we just talked about the trial. Basically, they said how sorry they were, but they were helpless in the glare of the justice system, like most mothers of the accused, or
no idea what's going on.
They're just like baffled. And my mum is, bless her, she's not that kind of a fighter. She's incredibly intelligent and cultural and all the rest of it, but baffled when it comes to it. She didn't know. She was at every day of the trial, but didn't know the reason I was inside. Couldn't understand from her 60s boomer into the Generation X what had happened. So she just had my stepdad there trying to explain it all to her. And he was only being kind of talking about the case in facts, and I was talking about the case in facts back to him. And before you know it, the hour and a half has gone in sort of talking about that kind of thing. And it's very, very sweet, because when you're inside, it's also boring and bleak. And as you said, it's kind of nice in sort of Stafford, and it's kind of nice in Dartmoor, but it's the term nice is weird, because that just means it's not dangerous. And I didn't feel much you could see it happening over there, the danger, but it didn't come around me. It's just boring. That's prison for you. It's just very boring. And so every time I saw them, every 6 months for the next couple of years, it got a little bit better, as prison does generally. But it's so sweet to see your mum, and you get the occasional.
Every 6 months they visited. Was it only every 6 months?
I know you could have it kind of every month. And
I know you. But what I'm saying is that I mean, another thing the book covers is the cost to the unseen victim of these wives and mothers, and I'm not taking anything away from your parents visiting every 6 months. A lot of these people are visiting as often as they possibly can. Like every week, you've got 3 visits a month if you're on enhanced. And because they're so dispersed, the prisons, and especially sex offenders ones, that it's the cost to the person who is already struggling, a compromised income because the partner's been taken away. When an elderly person gets sent to prison, the pension is stopped. These people who are already very financially compromised are having to find additional costs on top to support their loved ones. And the fact of the matter is that rehabilitation is largely placed on the sustained contact of loved ones and these retained contacts. So 6 months is a long time for you to wait. Did nobody else come and visit you?
Had a couple of other visits, but I don't have a lot of friends, and I wasn't particularly interested in anyone coming to visit me. I'm just not particularly sort of sociable in that way. It was good to see Mum, and it was her doing the constancy. And there was another pal who did come to see me, but I'm just not. I didn't need rehabilitation because I didn't commit the crime in the first place. So I was just there.
I get that. Yeah. But whether you did it, whether you didn't, there's still too much onus on rehabilitation and strong family ties. And they push strong family ties, push, but there's no compensation for these people making those strong family ties. There's I've known people get into extraordinary amounts of debt to maintain the relationship and the contact that they've got and going down. I know that Purple Visits eliminated a lot of that because it was all done online. But prior to that day, I've known people spend £500 on a visit, just on one visit, to go and visit somebody, and it's just something I've always found extraordinary.
Quite. Well, what's a Purple Visit?
A Purple Visit is during COVID, people, obviously there was no prison visits at all, completely clamped down on them, so you could have a video visit. They were called Purple Visit. I don't know why they were called that, but you'd have a similar thing to what we're having now, and you'd be able to chat with your loved one via the internet. I've seen an awful lot of disgrace that's gone on with that, where people just have found it hilarious to expose genitalia and all sorts that's gone on with it. I can't see it being something with any longevity. I think they won't get people back into the visiting room, because there's nothing quite like hugging somebody you love, and a Purple Visit obviously doesn't afford that. Yeah. And I mean, yeah. Sorry.
I think to kind of get to the nub of what you're heading towards with this one is that there were lots of people that I was around inside. Just to name one, Mr. Charles Howson was a pal of mine at Dartmoor. He was a Commodore in the army, and he's kind of going through appeal after appeal after appeal, and it became a good pal of mine. And he would have as many visits as he could all the time, with lots of high-level dignitaries and his wife constantly coming in. Yeah, like every couple of weeks. And because he had cancer, bless him. He was basically filling his life inside the way it was outside, just in sort of prison clothes, but he'd have a cravat anyway, so he'd have prison clothes and a cravat. That's Charles, it's fantastic.
Did he allow him a cravat? He was allowed a cravat?
He was allowed everything. He's the Don, so he's just so incredibly charming and used to this for 70 years. He just got everything to go his way, and everyone loved him for it anyway. And he had a very compelling story. That guy's innocent as far as I'm concerned, and I'll put, never mind that part. That's a whole other story of things, isn't it? But he was constantly visiting, constantly active, and it kept him chipper, and that was good for the prison, good for his wing, good for everyone around him, and the magazine that I was kind of working on him with. So I would have some visits vicariously through him, and then every couple of months see my mum. So it was a kind of a little bit like that, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah.
It's a long way to come as well. Off to Dartmoor is like 200 miles away for anybody into the southwest, for almost anybody. Sorry.
Oh no, of course it is. Yeah, but as I just pointed out earlier, a lot of people, obviously, because sex offender prisons are so dispersed. The one that's quite local to where I am, which is HMP Avrig, that's now the largest Cat D sex offenders prison in the UK. I think we've got about 400 inmates in there, and because it's relatively local to where I live, I do meet up occasionally with some of the ladies whose partners are in there, but they're travelling up from down south, and their partners are seeing it as a lifeline, and they do get day visits. I mean, God, the things that they do around here is extraordinary. They're on the beaches, cleaning the beaches up, they're painting benches, they're doing all sorts in the community, and they wanted to obviously get back integrated in the community, and this is part of their rehabilitation. But it doesn't stop the ladies who were supporting them from having to pay out extraordinary amounts of money in order to go and visit them. It might sound like I'm asking for a hand. Wakes up one morning and thinks, I know, I want to be a partner of a sex offender. I want to spend hundreds of pounds every month I'm going and visiting somebody. Nobody decides that life, but they do. They do, and they're encouraged to do so. And that's what's, it's just that they're never spoken about, they're never identified, and they're certainly never recognised for the amazing work that they do. I call them unlikely angels, because that's what they are. They're unlikely angels.
They're absolutely not kind of recognised in the media, as you say, but in the community they are. And the thing is, you talk about sort of sex offenders as if they're a different kind of human being, but they're not. They're people convicted of sex offences, not sex offenders, which is a label.
You are so right. I do that all the time. I'm sorry.
That's perfectly natural. Everyone does, don't they? But they're people, because it's up to a fifth now of the estate, as you mentioned, sort of 19, 20,000, and increasing all the time because of how they increase the Me Too stuff.
I think it's 19%. Last time I looked, it was 19% of
exactly
inmates.
That's a fifth. It's a fifth. And
yeah, it is, which is a substantial amount. But the fact of the matter is that of all the prison inmates, so the minute I think we're at 99 or 98,000.
Yeah.
The people who've been, so their index offence and what they're in there for this time may not be what they've done historically. That's the thing. It's all about index offences. I've found, so they could have done something historically that was as heinous as rape or child murder, and then they've gone on to create. So yeah, I'm talking like off of the tangent, as I often do. But
that's exactly what happens, isn't it, with the bundling sort of thing that Alison Saunders was dumped for, putting.
She dumped. Did she not walk? I thought she walked.
Well, it's a political thing, wasn't it? But I think she was pushed just before she was being, just before she was being pushed.
I speak about Alison in my book, Miss Saunders, as I call her. I speak about her.
Yes, you've got a letter from her, haven't you? So,
yeah, really interesting letter, incredibly interesting.
Exactly. It's difficult to talk about her now because she's gone into media history, and people don't care or don't know what. If you say, "I was convicted during Alison Saunders' sort of time," people go, "Oh, tell me about that," because they don't really remember very well the fact that he would casually put people away like a witchfinder general, and everyone thinks that stuff that happens in the news when it comes to sex offences is something completely new, but it's not. She was doing it for years, and before her in America, Title IX.
That's something that I discussed in my book, is that I went down the Ofcom route because of the ITV documentary. I got Ofcom and I went through the whole, it's embarrassing. I was called Mrs. T. So I did that to try and obviously get some, I just wanted some recognition for the terribleness that happened to me. I got my MP involved and I contacted Miss Saunders, and between me and my MP, we managed to get this letter sent back from her. It was around the time that Liam Allen was up before the courts, and ultimately it was thrown out. I will go into a little bit more detail about that for the sake of the public viewing. That the night before his case was withdrawn or thrown out by the judge, it was identified that there'd been serious non-disclosure of evidence that proved irrefutably that he hadn't committed the crimes that it was accused of.
40,000 text messages, I think
it was. And the woman in that case has never, ever been brought to any type of trial. She's never been anything. She was just left to walk free. She's still a victim. She's still got anonymity, which is something that I find incredible. But the night before all this information was found and Liam Allen was told, go home, crack on with the rest of your life. He's now got his own website. It's called Defendant. I couldn't endorse anybody who's done something with his life on the back foot of what happened to him. As tremendous, well done. But it was around that time, and Miss Saunders made comments in the letter that she sent to me about certain, well, you need to buy the book and read the book, but about certain things that were going to change and remedies that were going to be brought in. And there's 2 paragraphs in there that discuss what she put in her letter to me, and nothing's changed.
You have to give us a little bit.
Changed.
They're going to buy the book anyway. Just what's in the paragraph?
She said, "Oh, I can't remember. It's ages since I wrote that chapter. It's ages, but just that obviously they identified and understood. This is my wording, not her wording. Identified and understood that there were failings within the way that the CPS record disclosure and how they pass it over to the prosecution, and that going forward things will be remedied. That things would change. That was. I'm using the word remedy because 1, I like it, and 2, I think she used it. But there would be change. There would be change in how these things were done. But nothing's changed as far as I'm concerned. I still have people approaching me on a daily basis who are struggling with disclosure, non-disclosure of items that they believe are there. And in fact, I've got somebody very, very recent who I'm supporting, and his solicitor or his barrister, his counsel, are really struggling to get the undisclosed piece of evidence. They're just not willing to put them over. How that's still happening in this day and age is way beyond me, because it should just all be transparent. All of it should be transparent, and it should be between defence and prosecution to decide what is undisclosed evidence, not just the CPS.
Yeah.
And that is it.
And the police have been under such incredible sort of scrutiny over the last few years, but this year it's just ramped up to insane levels, you know, after Everard, after David Carrick, and then after everything they ignored in the Eleanor Williams situation, you know, the grooming gangs.
That's local to me, is Eleanor Williams. You know, I never for 1 second ever thought that she was lying. Never for 1 second, because the public support that she had in the area that I live in was so extraordinary, and the story that she put across was so extraordinary that it just, and where I come from, you know, where I never thought, it just never entered my head that she could possibly be telling the amount of unfathomable lies that that came out of her. It was incredible. But you're quite right, the police are under scrutiny. I believe a lot of that is to do with the amount of people who are videoing what's going on, the amount of criminals who are being identified on a daily basis who are embedded in the police, the horribleness of what goes on. I've got my own, and I know I said I wasn't going to discuss it, but book 2 actually covers my own despondency, I suppose, for want of a better word, that I have in my local police constabulary about something serious that happened against me. And that covers book 2, is where, as a victim of crime, I have taken myself away from that and decided not to pursue putting what is 100% a very dangerous criminal back behind bars. But my lack of trust and belief in the police to have conducted a fair investigation and a correct investigation is zero. So I stepped back and decided to not pursue continuing with the police investigation that should have gone ahead.
Right.
No, that's book 2. Book 2.
Yeah, you're going to explain in that book the context of what you've just talked about, then, because
exactly,
that's just an outline of what you mean.
That's entirely of what I mean. Yeah. But I've got no faith in the police, and to be fair, up until 2015, I was pro police. I was all for them, and then come 2016, when what happened with my ex-partner and the deceitfulness and the wrongfulness of what happened in order for him to be sent to prison, that affected me directly, me as an unseen victim directly, led me to write the book. And that's where it's all come from. And that's where book 1 and book 2 come from, is that, you know, I'm not saying that every single officer is not fit for the job or fit for purpose. What I'm saying is that there's got to be a massive shake-up, because the way that they're conducting themselves and conducting their inquiries and investigations, as far as I'm concerned, in the thousands of people that I've supported, are woefully inadequate and just not correct. They aren't correct. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a barrister. I'm not a judge. But I know right from wrong. And I know when something is there in black and white. And I know when something is totally missing. Yeah. And that's what I've struggled with for all these years. And that's what I stand up for. That's what I have a voice for.
Absolutely. And if it comes to like sort of talking on behalf of the police, which I'm not a thing I would normally do, but given the journalistic situation here, is that they have constant kind of they're always under pressure for targets, for coming up with things, and if they're going to have to prosecute sort of sexual allegations, which used to be incredibly difficult to prosecute and didn't, and now they're incredibly easy to prosecute. And almost every man out there, if you do enough digging and if you have enough interest in doing so, you can uncover something that he did in 1985. So then it all becomes, it's the low-hanging fruit. And then then you got all the police doing that. They're all a bit embarrassed about asking the questions, but the paperwork comes through, and before you know it, you're in court. And it's like, what happened? You know, so I have a degree of sort of sympathy for them because of the political pressure being put on by bloody activists. To my constant bugbear.
I'll tell you something that really intrigued me. So the investigation that happened back in February this year, it went on until the end of June, and the police are obliged to give you a call every so often. Yeah, they have to. The officer in case has to call you. On not one occasion did that person not call me at the time and the date that he was meant to make that call. He never missed it, religiously, never missed it. He failed to go to the pub and take CCTV footage. He failed to contact my witnesses to get to get evidence. He failed to tell me not to have a shower. He failed to not tell me. There's a catalogue of errors, but on not one date did he ever not call me at the time, specifically to the fucking second.
Hello.
That he was supposed to. So is that about diary manager? Weird thing is that, you know, you're not a diary manager, you're a police officer. Do your job. Do your job. Well, I found it crazy. I found it incredible, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back in the end.
There is such an amazing amount of bizarre stuff that the police do in terms of safeguarding and everything else, where you get these. They're operating all over the place in various unseen ways, and you develop your bits of evidence here and there about what they're up to. You're like, they're almost obsessed, and it's almost kind of a bit embarrassing because you're like, I want to get some help or something, you know. And they don't like it when you point that out, of course, so you don't sort of do it very often. But they're almost like, you know?
It's I mean the human beings, the people. I don't take that away from him. And the person, the officer in case, was a lovely man. He was a lovely man, but you're not a diary. You know. Do your job, mate. Do your job.
That's right. And the way that they handle having to prosecute a bunch of people that have done what they've done, and like there's about as far as I can tell with the stats, about 6 in every 100 police officers are some degree of wrong, and you know and that's just headlines, of course. It's not me coming up with that. And you're like, well, so is there a connection between being a bully and then the stuff that we know that they get up to? You know, and I'm not even bashing them. I'm not even a kind of journalist that will bash the polies. I'm trying to speak up for them.
No, I'm not. I don't bash them. No, I wouldn't want to be them. And they're under no illusions that I'm not the biggest #1 fan. But at the end of the day, if we didn't have them, we'd be in a far sorry state. So let's we'd be in a far sorry state.
I just want them to not be. Just want them to not
completely dark now. Sorry, I apologise for that.
You've just become a face, Emma. Just a face there. It's about to wrap up. It's doing its thing. Your book, Unseen Victims, is out on the 23rd of April, 2023.
St George's Day. St George's Day. Get behind St George's Day. I'll be proud.
And your birthday, I believe. So that's fantastic, and I'm sure everyone will go and buy that. And I think the cover of it is the advertisement for this podcast. So
thank you, Sean. Yeah, no, it's been lovely speaking with you. Long time no speak.
Perhaps we'll get back to the other stuff that we do in time. But it's good to talk about this book for now because it's all positive in it. Okay.
Look at yourself.
Thank you.
Love you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.